Hey, what is happening and what is up? Hold out that glass, guys, because you know what time it is. We're about to fill it up. Hey, I wanted to start this off with a disclaimer. This is very adult in nature. There's lots of talk of sex and sexual reproductive organs and innuendos, so this is an adult episode. And I wanted to warn you up front. So if you're around littles, make sure you got your headphones on or wait till you are alone and can listen to this. And full disclaimer, I was going on my friend's show, Nick from the Occult Rejects. There are people in here that are New Agers and not Christians, and there is some dirty words in here. I caught the few that I could hear when I was editing. We're all adults here. If we can't handle a curse word, there's something wrong with us. But just letting everybody know up front, this is a very sexual in nature talk. It's about the Song of Solomon, all the sexual imagery in that psalm, and there is some 4-letter words here and there. So just full disclaimer. I wanted you guys to know up front. So make sure the littles ain't around, and enjoy. And then also in chapter 5, this is the last one, chapter 5, verse 4 through 5, quote, "My beloved put his hands by the hole of the door and my bowels were moved for him. I rose up to open my beloved, and my hands dripped with mirth, and my fingers with sweet-smelling mirth, the vaginal mucus, upon the handles of the lock, the lips." So the hole of the door is the keyhole. It's the opening of the vagina. And the handles is the labia. Her bowels that were being moved, she's describing an orgasm with her sticky fingers. So after reading that and seeing all that stuff and then rereading that, man, I think the imagery is pretty damning. Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion is advised.
You talk about extreme.
If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call the beast by name. They call it dangerous thinking, they call it heresy. But fire doesn't fear the dark, it only shows what's real.
Oops. Okay, I lost my tab. Shit. Welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Today we're stepping into one of the most beautiful, mysterious, and debated books in the entire Bible, the Song of Solomon, also called the Song of Songs. And this is one of those texts that has never sat still. It has never belonged to only one camp, one interpretation, or one theological lane. For centuries, religious leaders have treated it as sacred allegory. In Jewish tradition, often as the love between God and Israel. In Christian tradition, often as the love between Christ and the church, or Christ and the individual soul. For mystics, it became a book of longing, union, hidden wisdom, and divine intimacy. At the same time, historians and academics have often approached it very differently. Many have read it first as an ancient Near Eastern style love poetry, sensual, symbolic, layered, and deeply tied to the imagery of gardens, spices, vineyards, fragrance, fertility, beauty, desire, and royal language. Literary scholars have wrestled with its structure, its speakers, its symbolism, and its place in the biblical canon. Some see wedding imagery, some see court poetry, some see echoes of temple, kingship, and sacred landscape. Others see a deliberately enigmatic text that was later spiritualized by religious tradition. So this is a book that has been read as romance, allegory, mysticism, wisdom, literature, and sacred poetry. But what if there's something even darker beneath the surface? What if some of its imagery is not just erotic, not just symbolic, not just devotional, but ritualistic? That's where today's conversation is going. Joining us is Justin of Prometheus Lens, or Doc, and he's bringing a provocative theory to the table that the Song of Solomon may preserve a deeper current of sacrificial symbolism, blood imagery, and ritual language. Beneath that, what many people think is simply a love poem may be something older, stranger, and far more liturgical than most readers ever imagined. So before we get to Doc, I am going to introduce the other rejects joining us today. And we got Kaiva Rose. What is going on, Kaiva? Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm Kaiva Rose. I am a traditional astrologer and I read tarot cards. You can find me at 11kaivarose33.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and I post daily and weekly astrology videos for what to expect of the transits. Thank you.
Hell yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Glad you could make it. Mm-hmm. And we got my man Brandon, Magus in the Media. What is going on, bud? How are you?
Hello, Nick. Thank you again for having me. All is great in the world of the strange. This should be a fantastic conversation just because there's so much depth, breadth, allegory, brilliance, darkness within that great magical tome called the Bible. So it should be interesting nonetheless. Everyone head over. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, and share to Magus in the Media. Just dropped a brilliant conversation with the great Sarah Janes, not just about her book, Initiation to the Dream Mysteries, but about dreaming, lucid dreaming, the ancient initiations, and all the things. And so just head over there, give that a watch, and comment, like, and all the things. Head over to Kaiva's stuff. She's brilliant. Nick is crushing it at all times, and we're going to figure out what Doc knows. Let's get it.
Hell yeah. Thank you very much, Brandon. Appreciate that. And definitely go check out, another thing I've been hearing. I've had a lot of people hit me up about you and the thing that you've been doing with Jin lately. People like raving reviews, bro. They love it. So if people haven't checked that out, go definitely check that out, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Hell yeah. And finally, Doc, Justin, my man. People haven't seen, I was just on his show recently, and I think we killed it. I think it was a great episode. Please go check it out. It's on his end. And Doc, man, what is going on, sir? How the hell are you?
I'm doing good, Nick. Thank you for having me back, man. It's been a while. Sitting there thinking, I was like, the last time I think I talked with you, I was sick, and I ended up having to bail out because I had to go to the bathroom and throw up my guts, man. So it's good to be back and feeling much better.
That's right. The last time you were a guest, you actually left and went and threw up and had to sign off the show.
Yeah, man, I got sick. But man, it's good to be back, man. Thank you for having me back. But for just introductions, Justin, Doc Brown, kind of got the nickname Doc. My show is the Prometheus Lens podcast. I'm the author of the book, The Epic of Esau, Birthright and Seed War. And I'm currently working on my second book, and this is kind of some of the research that I found digging through it. And I'm going to be calling it The Tale of Two Trees, Chasing the Dragon. So, it was heavily influenced, just like a lot of my biblical studies, and I kind of got into Dever, the Dragon Legacy, and the Grail Kings, Lord of the Rings, Gardner, so that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at the serpent seed or the dragon court through biblical and what's the word I'm looking for, secular lenses, and kind of seeing what holds together. Where are the common themes?
Oh yeah. No, thank you very much, man. What was it? Well, first off, I guess just to give some of the listeners a little bit of an idea, and only because I would consider this kind of like getting into an occult topic. I guess like when it comes to like how you started looking at this, or maybe even your background in studies, like, can you just give people an idea of like, I guess like how you started to even come across this whole idea for this topic?
Yeah. When I was writing my book, The Epic of Esau, I'd stumbled into a bunch of, extra biblical texts, and as I was going through those, they all point to Esau being of the serpent seed. And so I ended up just kind of finding all these things referencing this serpent seed. And so then I got turned on to the account in Genesis being an allegory for a sexual act. And the more that I looked at it, it's the only thing that made sense to me. And it tied up so many ambiguous things throughout the text that I just didn't make sense. So once I discovered that, it kind of just sent me down a rabbit trail. So then, like I said, I bumped into Gardner's work. I bumped into Nicholas Dever, The Dragon Legacy. And it's basically, I think, just the same thing. It's what the Bible and Christians call serpent seed. is what they even claim themselves to be. They are of the lineage of the dragon court. But De Vere and them, they take the viewpoint of, instead of being all mystical and, you know, woo woo, it's more real. These were real people, but they were just, you know, that's the word I'm looking for. They were exceptionally smart and had foresight, you know, and maybe what some people might call magic or high science. And just throughout the years, they were sensationalized, basically. So it's been really good to kind of get that other perspective. And it's just sent me down this little trail. And I was like, I want to get these two ideas and marry them together and see what fits, what sticks, kind of thing.
What fits, what sticks. I like that. Throw it against the wall and see if it stays there.
Yeah.
One thing from, you know, kind of going over the Song of Solomon, one thing I noticed, Brandon maybe even like see a resemblance. And when I say this, I'm not like, I'm not trying to draw a parallel that it's a negative thing that Crowley ripped off. But to me, certain things in that Song of Solomon seemed very New Age to me. And I actually was like, you know, it seems like, you know, like how much did you steal from Catholicism? You know,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. So like even when I was going through it, I was like, I don't know. For some reason, it had a feel of shit that I've seen Crowley write, but kind of talk on. That was the feeling.
No, for sure. I mean, Crowley himself was deeply integrated into the Plymouth Brethren, which was a super strict Christian sect that his father was a pastor of. And so, to be honest, even when I was talking to David Shoemaker, we both came to the conclusion how much and deeply seated the Christian mythological symbols were in Crowley's work, let alone in the Golden Dawn is an esoteric Christian group, which is very general. It's not a Christian group, but they are taking Christian mythology and integrating it into the mystical tradition and the magical practices. So it's hard to get away from.
Oh, even the not to go on about it, but like even the Enochian alphabet, that was designed to be an alphabet to hand the Christians. Like it was supposed to be for them, and it just never worked out that way, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. So I mean, guess what I was getting at? Like I could see how it seems deeply occult or deeply layered, that this Song of Solomon, and it does look like something that I've seen like people rip off. So I find it very interesting. But Doc, yeah, I guess I don't know where do you want to start from here?
I guess just for those that's not familiar, kind of lay a little groundwork of, you know, who or what the Dragon Court is. And like you were saying, because this people group, even according to De Vere, and he is of the Dragon Court, he claims to be of the Dragon Court family. He lays out their lineage, their history, and their migration patterns. And that's basically why you see so much of what people call occult symbolism interwoven into the Bible and all these other cultures, is because it's this. They claim that it is this family that traveled and migrated and brought all their ideologies and ritual practices with them, and it kind of just got, you know, colonized and married with all these other different cultures, and that's why you see so much similarities, you know, with the Hindu religions and some of their beliefs and symbolism, along with the Israelites, along with Europe, because this is all the places that they traveled from, and they all stemmed basically from like Greater Scythia, so the Black Caucasus Mountains region, and traveled out from there to Eurasia and India and all these other places.
I need to, I don't know, maybe it's early morning. I was editing really late last night, woke up really early. Can you first make the connection between the Songs of Solomon, what you're talking about, with this Dragon Court? I don't really, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's the thing. That's my my crescendo. I don't want to throw that.
Okay,
right
okay, nice. Okay, yeah. Sorry. You build up, and I'll. Okay, good. I love it.
Yeah.
I have one question too.
You got to give me a little foreplay first. You can't just take me straight to the bedroom.
Of course. Yeah, Kaiba, what was your question?
So are you talking about like the Yamnaya culture, that kind of expanded from the Caucasus Mountain area that like created the Nordics and like the Hittites and like all of that sort of situation?
I'm not familiar with that term, but it sounds like it's the same because, like I said, I read through Nicholas de Vere, and he just calls them, you know, the Dragon Court or the Scythians. And he has all these other you know, races that basically he's in his interpretation, it starts there. But as far as like the terminology that you're saying, I'm not familiar with, if I'm just being honest.
Do you have like the time period?
No, this is all just generalization.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because okay, cool. Just want to make sure because I'm like a history person. I love that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there is some dates in here, but more modern, like not going back to like big swaths, 10,000 BC, or whatever else. But it's kind of just a big swath, honestly. But
nice. And then before you hit it, and so you're because the Songs of Solomon, I mean, some of these things are really hard to date, but the idea of being around the 10th century BC, right? The mid 10th century of that stuff coming out. So I'm guessing whatever it is happening before that time frame.
Yeah. Well, see, I think I got the date of when they have it down here at the bottom, but basically he's saying that whether when this thing was recorded, it is calling back and has been assembled from long time oral traditions. So even if you get a date that's 600 BC or whatever else, that's not saying that this practice or belief is that
correct.
It's an old tradition way back that finally got written down. But
Yep.
He says that I remember it stems basically from the Egyptian practices and stuff of Sobek, I believe is what he was saying.
Oh yeah, nice.
So
yeah, the gator, right?
Another reptilian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or crocodile. Sorry, everyone out there. I have such problems with gators and crocodiles. I don't really know the difference. So it's a crocodile. That's my fault.
But yeah, this dragon court, like I said, it kind of stems, the serpent seed, the dragon court, and it even goes back to, the Egyptian Sobek. It goes back to, Samaria, Acadia. Even the Sumerian Kings list talks about the Anunnaki. They're in this kind of also. But in that list, it even talks about like Gilgamesh being described as like his father was like a vampiric spirit. And I stumbled across that in my other book, The Epic of Esau. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I just kind of put it away. But this actually made a connection for me. But even Anana herself, she's talked about devouring her lovers. So that's kind of got even more of a vampiristic spice to it there. But even the Sumerian creation story, it starts with this mother dragon, dragoness in creation, Tiamat. But right now, we're in this patriarchal society. Sorry. Back then, it was all matriarchal. They venerated the woman. The woman was the one that they worshiped. She was the bringer of life and all these things. It's kind of changed over the years, especially with the Roman Catholic Church kind of taking over and migrating things over. But this dragon court, they have so many like these little subset names that we're familiar with that because of Lord of the Rings and Hollywood and all this kind of stuff, they've just twisted and distorted these family traits or characteristics to where when we hear them now, we just think fantasy and this crazy thing that they spun way out of proportion. But like some examples are fairies, elvens, vampires, and werewolves. And all of these, according to DeVere, that these are actual people of this dragon court, but they're kind of like job titles or subclasses of people, but just through mythology, scare tactics and things like that, they've got blown up to where when we hear them now, we laugh or think of these fictional type characters when in fact they were not. And he says that this is because of the Roman Catholic Church trying to demonize this family because they were the ones that had the divine right to rule. They were the royals. And even DeVere says that according to the Anunnaki creation legends, Enki made this race of humans, but then he makes this sub race of humans, and they're supposed to be like the overlords of the people. And they're saying that is who they are, that they are just a sub race created with the purpose to oversee humanity. So whether it's true or not, that's what they claim.
One thing I wanted to ask just real quick, and I'm not trying to be petty. I'm actually very interested on the vampire thing that you mentioned. Was the word actually vampire? or is it another word that's being taken as being close to vampire?
Um,
And the reason I'm asking too, were these people, did they die and then come back and want blood, or were they just drinking blood?
no, they were just drinking blood, and
Well,
I'll
that's
get
the
that
thing.
right here.
That's the thing. The only reason why I'm bringing that up is when you like I covered the history of vampirism. You
Mhm.
have to die to act and then come back to be a vampire. So I was just assuming this is a word that is being translated closest to vampire, because even the word vampire didn't come out, I think, until like the 15 or 1600s.
Yeah, like I was saying, I don't know what the original word was, but how it morphed into something mythological that we think of that's not what it was originally. But not get into that because I actually had that next. But how that got spun out with the vampires and werewolves specifically was because this ruling class, these royals, they practiced ancestor worship. And so by doing that, they venerated their dead ancestors. And in doing so, they would go into the tombs of their ancestors, and they would sleep there and sometimes stay there for a couple weeks at a time. And so they would pray to their dead ancestors for guidance and wisdom, and sometimes even for them to embody them, so that's where you get the church version of, possession. And so you had this royal ruling class, these overlords, that they seen them going in these tombs and sleeping, staying there sometimes for weeks or a month at a time, coming in out of the tombs. And they were the fairies, the elven races, the fair folks. So they were fair skinned, really pale, and they were coming in and out of these tombs. So, and then they drank blood. So the Roman Catholic Church, when they came along, they had the donation of Constantine, which is highly contested. Supposedly Constantine on his deathbed handed over all the power to the Catholic Church to dethrone and enthrone families and kings and queens and all this stuff, which stinks to high heaven anyway. But they used that, and also with these scare tactics to make the people be afraid and doubt these people to help dethrone them. That way, when they threw out these families, the people didn't rise up. So they spun it and said, oh, well, these people are how it got. I don't know what the actual word was then, but now we call vampire is these people. Look, they're the undead. They're pale. They're coming in and out of the tombs. They drink blood. These people are evil. We got to, rid ourselves of them, kind of thing. And the werewolves, same thing. And where you get the association with the full moon is for the menstrual cycles. Yeah, they drank blood, but it was the women's flow is what they drank.
That even goes back to more shit that reminds me of the OTO and Crowley.
Yeah.
With the menstrual fluid and the cakes of light.
Yeah, and that's what this all stems back from, according to him. So it wasn't like the werewolves and vampires like you think of, just going out and randomly grabbing people and sucking their blood because they were bloodthirsty, or he even talks about the adrenochrome. He said all that stuff, he said, you're getting, it's like luck of the draw. You don't know what you're getting. And if they're afraid and scared, he said their cortisol levels are spiked. He said, so if you're ingesting this blood, you're slowly poisoning yourself, He said, so what they drunk was the menstrual flow of virgin people, virgin girls of this royal family of the dragon court, and they were pure bloods. So, and they believed that this bloodline had special powers. They had forethought and prophecy, and all this other kind of stuff. So that's why they interbred. They wanted to keep that bloodline pure. And so these virgin females that was in this dragon court, they were venerated as like Grail maidens or dragon princesses. And they would lovingly, and willingly give this to their family members to empower them and help them grow stronger and stay young and all that kind of stuff. So that's where that all stems from. And that was the blood that they drank. They wasn't just going out randomly grabbing people up and draining them of their blood.
Yeah, nice. Can you remind me where are you source? Where are you reading this?
Nicholas de Vere's the Dragon Court,
okay,
or the Dragon Legacy. I'm sorry.
Nice.
And let's see.
Oh, one thing I did want to mention just real quick, because we're talking about the whole cakes of light, and I'll give you a chance to find your shit. Something that I think I I found that interesting, and I do wonder if that's what Crowley had tried getting at, because he throws in, I think, of like child or baby or something about blood. This is, just could be nothing to do with it. But the first menstrual cycle a woman has after giving birth will be completely different than all the rest of them.
Oh,
Actually,
is it really?
Yeah, the child. So I even wondered if he's going after like the menstrual fluid from after your first birth. I'm just throwing that in there. It was a thought that I had.
Well, it's fascinating. It's fascinating how and this could be my ignorance. Most likely it is that I feel like we're continually mistaking allegory and metaphor and symbol. And then when we're trying to recreate old rituals from ancient times of ancient people who ended up forgetting about these same things. And I really feel like it's an inverted priest class that then takes these writings that were written. It's like we forget that like grimoires and spell books and magical texts are written in code. And so it's like you get individuals, even Crowley himself, maybe whoever it is, trying to recreate these rituals and alchemical understanding of the human person, and then actually then doing blood magic or blood ritual and life force stuff, when actually you were supposed to be just reading it as a symbol. And you know what I mean? Instead of actually taking blood and drinking it, which we realize causes massive amounts of disease, and stuff like that if it's not your own, and can do weird stuff to you.
The only thing your body will absorb if you drink blood is the iron. That's the only thing you get out of it.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the only thing you'll get out of by ingesting blood is the iron.
That's crazy. Interesting. So you might as well just take a supplement.
Yeah, well, with him, he was talking about that too. He said that him and his family and the people that are this dragon court make fun of the New Agers. They make fun of the Wiccans and the witches and stuff like that. He said because they're not. He says in his book, he says, we laugh at them. He said, because they're posers.
Uh-huh.
They are. Because what he says is only the dragon court, the people of the bloodline, can perform these things. He said, so they could have the best grimoires, the best potions, everything that's exactly right how they done it, back in the day. But because they are not of that bloodline, they cannot perform this magic. And basically the charlatans profit and sell them these things.
Interesting. Is that what Nicholas de Vere is saying? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I think that's wrong.
But he was saying melatonin and stuff, he said, is actually absorbed from the blood also. That's what he claimed anyway.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there was something.
He was specifically. So he claims to be of this order. Like, does he have an example of like his lineage?
Yeah,
because like I've always thought like the Yamnaya culture, like that area, typically the way that they kind of go from that area is like the dragon people. Like, I agree with that. I don't know about the drinking the blood part because I don't necessarily know that. But in my own studies and consciousness, and even to Sobek, I also got to there in a whole different way from like the Pictish culture in Scotland.
Yes, so it is in
the Pictish culture, right? So that's something that I just found in my own random rabbit hole that I go down. So like, I'm with you with that. I don't know about the blood part because I obviously can't make that up in my own head. The other things made sense, but that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, talking about melatonin, and that goes back to the pineal gland. This is just like even a thing where I'm wondering like if we are even talking about that, is blood even needed? But just like an interesting fun fact to people listening. When a mother puts the child up to the nipple when it's breastfeeding, it gets that like colostrum or that thin stuff that comes at the beginning. That actually is like the mother's pineal gland having a conversation with the child's pineal gland. It's going to tell her where it's at, the longitude, latitude, seasons, time. Like, it's really actually grounding you here through that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I even think in Crowley's Knox formula, when you're supposed to be Isis and you're pinching a nipple, acting like you're holding the child.
Yeah.
Knowing the fucking, even you have nerves from your nipple that go to your pineal gland.
Definitely.
So it's not all dicks and demons. Maybe there's
it's not. And there's that bio-physiological activation of, even in your Chinese acupuncture, you're taught to pinch certain aspects because these lead through the meridian points to the nervous system, to parts of your brain, and releases hormones to help relax and do the things. So that's something to that.
And one thing, just real quick, I did want to ask you, Justin. I assumed you didn't, but I was just wondering, kind of like what Brandon was getting at, even with like ciphered stuff, something that I eventually want to show on the podcast. It's just something I have to worry about, like DMCA laws, copyright shit, because of the OTO, and they've already hit me with it before. I do have pictures of Crowley's. Oh God, what was it? Fuck, it was one of his books. Whatever, I already forgot the name of it. But The Vision and the Voice. And in his book, where it shows him writing it before it gets published, he has like, the way he does it's like one side on the left is completely for notes and math, and then the other side is his writing. And you will see him actually doing the math and figuring out how to place shit into the next page. It's basically what I'm getting at. It's highly ciphered, obviously. Considering this is the Old Testament, did you think of gematria at all as being a case?
I never even looked into that. I know there is gematria, and I've seen and read up on some cases of some different scenarios of it. But as far as this Song of Solomon, I have not.
I didn't. I was just asking. I didn't.
Right.
I highly recommend looking into it. I highly recommend that. Yeah.
Okay. But that pentagram, he talks about it. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I just wanted to get back to the dragon court. I'm super interested in dragon culture. So can we get?
Oh yeah. But I was going to say the pentagram, the inverse pentagram. He talks about that in there too, with the occult and the witchcraft and stuff. And he said that the dragon court's interpretation. He says when you see that inverted pentagram, how people draw the Baphomet head inside,
Yeah.
He said that the points up top are the horns. He said they draw the horns. He said then they draw like a candle or a flame in the center of the head, and then the ears and everything else. He says that's inverted the other way. He said that same symbol to the dragon court, he said, is the divine feminine, or like a naked woman. So you have the head at the first point, and the ears of the Baphomet are the arms of the woman, and the 2 points are her legs spread, and that fire in the crotch symbolizes starfire and the drinking of this menstrual blood. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty weird.
That's funny. Well, it also, when you were subscribing it, I was thinking of a Vitruvian man, interesting enough, on what he looks like around the circle. And Westworld uses that same image in their TV series, as well as it being linked up to sacred geometry. And so what I find fascinating with a lot of these people who are making a lot of this content and these books, and when they're trying to say they're linked up to some ancient Dracos lineage of the misalignment of symbols and signs is really like prevalent along all these things. And so it's like, even when we use terms like Baphomet in Eliphas Levi, he made it as a glyph, as a cryptic symbol of the amalgamation of the great work, instead of it being some satanic figure of, because even when we use these terms, we're placing it within a Christian mythos of an all good God and an all bad devil. And these two are continually at war, which I think is a great cosmic drama. And I think a lot of this is a great story that we can understand the cosmic drama in another way. But it's fascinating nonetheless.
Well, DeVere, if you look at DeVere and you look him up online, they got a website. He has his genealogies posted for all to see.
Oh yeah, I was pulling it up. Yeah, no, I see it. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it ain't just something he's throwing out and wanting you to trust him and believe him. He lays it all out for you. But
what's interesting though, just real quick about the Baphomet thing, that's not even, Eliphas Levi ripped that off of Athanasius Kircher anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
I heard it was the Templars. They found it first with the Templars.
Oh, I'm talking about the image, and even with the Solvan and Coagula written on the arms, that goes back to Athanasius. No, Heinrich Kuhnroth, and like one of his emblems, like from the 15 or 1600s. It was before Levi. It's interesting how like Eliphas Levi kind of like took that and changed it and ran with it. But if you went back to the original version, it's probably harder to say it's satanic that way. It's just interesting. The original one doesn't, and the other one does.
And then it's not a direct lineage, just so you know there, Doc. It's not a direct lineage from the goat of Mendes, which is what the Knights of Templar are talking about when people use that term Baphomet with the Templars. They're using a term, and then all of a sudden you get Kircher and then Levy. Like, there's not a direct line of interpretation
they're
from
making
that.
Association.
Yeah, they're making a
Okay.
big leap, because what they want to do is they want to demonize, so to speak, the Templars into making them bad and making it okay that they fucking killed. They killed all these people.
And you'll see that with this as I'm going through, because this is from DeVere's point of view, and that's what he says. The Catholic Church comes in and demonizes and tries to wipe out their race and exterminate them and demonize them. Same thing with the vampire and the werewolf stuff. That was another way that the Catholic Church tried to demonize this race of people. But
nice. Yeah, back at it. Sorry, we interrupted you a bunch. Let's go.
Oh no, I was going to say, Kiva wanted me to get back to the Dragon Court stuff. So here we are.
She's all excited.
So the Scythians, okay, and of course this is kind of new information. I've just recently started studying, have notes, so I kind of got to look back and forth here. But,
he was even telling me this was kind of new. I think last week.
Yeah. I just found this stuff like last week and just been typing it out, So I'm excited to talk about it. So I don't really know anything other than what I know,
Gotcha.
But it says the Scythians. It says in this discussion we speak of the Scythians as fairies, dragons, vampires, and elves. But in this discussion, when we mention that, we are not talking about the entire race as a whole, but of the royal Scythians. And they got their names from their curved blades, originally spelled Sithian. And this is where we get the word scythe, the curved farming blade. The name Scythian is related to a group of words that appear in Indo-European languages as far apart as Erie and North India, indicating they had common Aryan origin in Scythia. The Sidir, Siddir, in Danish society were witches who practiced knot tying and loosening, related to the mythic Norns, the Mori or the Fates, those who are responsible for the fate of mankind by the patterns that they weave. In India, they are called the Siddhis, Hiddhis, a word describing the powers of the yogi who self-realize. So they're kind of showing you these word associations of, their traveling patterns, their migration or influence patterns. But again, in Irish, the word city, or I'm probably pronouncing these words wrong. Sorry, guys. I'm a redneck. I can barely speak English. But Sidhe, and it describes the fairies and means powers once again. So it's saying that the Siddhi are the people of the powers. So this is the Scythian and or Scythians. And in Ireland, it's called they refer to these goddesses called the Sheila na Gigs.
I've heard of them, yeah.
And it says these were goddesses of sovereignty and transcendence, and their place over doors to churches, and many built on the side of ancient groves was symbolic for entering the vulva of the maiden and into the other world. They were permitted above church doorways because the early church wanted to be identified with the old ways, and they remained in order to attract and further convert the quote-unquote pagans. So if you look that up, it's wild. They have like these depictions of this Sheila Nagigs with her legs spread, and some of them she's even holding her vulva and spreading it open. It's above church doorways.
I covered that shit on Headless's show probably like 6 months ago. We used to do sigils or symbols, or sometimes I'd find architecture. And she's like fucking ripping that motherfucker wide open, legs up in the air and everything. I was like, this is the weirdest fuck. I had to show that. It was bizarre.
It blew my mind.
Yeah. It's pretty graphic, technically, kind of.
And this is where it comes from, this divine feminine worship and the blood menstrual cycle, drinking and all this kind of stuff. But it said, talking about the fairies, they were usually tall, pale skin with golden red hair and green eyes, unlike the Celts, who were stocky, ruddy complexions and dark hair. So in pre-Christian history, an Aryan was a high king. The real Aryans were red-haired and green-eyed. the Aryan Hittites were close allies to the Jews, whose draconian royal family, the House of David, made the Israelites, in a cultural sense, an early Aryan nation. And the Scythian and Aryan Gaels had many settlements around Israel and Judea. And it said Hurrians, like the Scythians, were Aryans. So this dragon court, they even claim that they can trace their lineage back to King David, and that's kind of where that goes to, talking about, you know, their migration patterns and influences that they had. Some Danann fled southwest to mainland Britain. Several centuries later, when the Romans encountered them in Scotland, they referred to them as Picts. This word slowly changed to describe the elven peoples, the Pixies. And these beings would become known as later, once again, sensationalized, but they were later become known as the leprechauns. And it says the etymology of this word has been thought to mean small-bodied, but actually means scaly-bodied, from the Latin word lepra, as in leprosy, scaly-skinned. And it says this was to describe their fish scale armor, which was very common for the Draconians, the Danes and Danann from Greater Scythia. Even the scaly twin pronged tail of the wolverine or mermaid was derived from the use by Grail maidens and their fish scale armored leggings, worn by the swan or raven, worn with swan or raven feathered cloaks. And it's, so to me, I wrote down in my little notes here that it's kind of got like some harpy imagery there. You know, if you got these draconian scale like leggings, and then you're covered in ravens or swan feather cloaks. But I thought that was weird. But even that word pict or pictish means painted. You had mentioned that earlier, referring to their bodies being covered in tattoos. And he said some of their favorites were labyrinths and spiral designs, and that we even find that in China, all the way in China. He mentions the Takla maiden mummy that was excavated in China in the 1960s. It had red golden hair and was buried with a cache of Tartarian plaid cloth and spiral painted pottery.
Nice.
I didn't want to just be long-winded. I want to give you a chance to jump in there.
Oh, that was good. One thing I did want to, I don't know, it just keeps on popping up in my head, and I'm not saying that's the case for this. But one thing I thought I found that was interesting, and I could be completely wrong, but it was the theory that I had when I was covering the vampirism stuff. When I was like checking like the areas where they were, you know, supposedly popping up, besides the TB being consistent with that, there was times when like even rabies, you know, was like kind of an issue, and they were almost kind of treating it the same as tuberculosis in the ways that they were treating it, kind of. And there was an area that at the same time when these people were having these outbreaks and then thinking that there was vampires, they were also experiencing some sort of deficiency. I think it was like the lack of a certain wheat that actually made your skin dry out and crack. So then you even get like the whole scaly look because of a deficiency. And then it's just like, it's interesting how like that took on as like with vampirism and scales and being pale. You know, I'm not saying that's the case here, but I did find that.
I mean, I think it could be a good association.
Yeah.
You know, like it stemmed from this later source where they were talking about these people coming in out of the tombs, drinking blood. Then later in the medieval times, when the plague rolled through and they were showing similar characteristics, they kind of just made that like an association, you know, quite possibly.
No, I just found it. It did make me think of that a little bit somehow. Yeah, that's interesting.
And didn't you say like they even had documents where they thought they were dead, and then but they actually wasn't? But then so when they like woke up or come about, they were like, "Oh my God, they're undead! They're coming out."
Yeah. They found some people that like they started eating their arms because like.
Oh my God.
Yo, you know what's the craziest thing too is that real quick, and I like, you know, to keep going on about it, give it away, but I did find it like just so weird and twisted how like shit can get. They actually had people like they were getting like cows and cattle, and like people were lining up, and like people were so afraid of getting tuberculosis that like they were literally like had cattle and they were just its neck or stab it, And they were holding cups right there and draining the blood and giving it to people. Like they thought that literally drinking that blood was going to save you from TB.
It's amazing what people do when they're afraid.
Yeah, and then I forgot. I think it might have been over in France when it first started. People started making almost like cartoon memes to make fun of these people, and they would depict them as pale and pointy eared. And then that's where you start getting the whole visual of a fucking vampire. But they were making fun of people drinking blood for tuberculosis, not people running around biting people's necks. It's just funny how like you see like the whole thing transform from, my opinion, it was all TB hysteria. Because even the church and the courts got involved to come up with a thing just to calm people the fuck down. It's pretty fucking.
That's pretty wild. And how, like, what exactly what you're saying, Nick? I've heard you talk about that before, and it makes complete sense to me. And then you mix that with other kinds of legends. That's exactly. So that you get zombie motif, COVID, zombie vampires, blood sucking energy loosh away from everybody else to put them in their homes. Not the point, but the idea of like we mix the idea of the alchemists immortalizing the human body type of thing with then these crazy attributes that are going on at times with like vampires, blood sucking, all that, so it's like so much laden with arcane symbolism, and then you're intermixing historical disease and plagues at the same time so it seems like all these things just start to get kind of layered on top of themselves, and then you get this kind of like like Vlad the Impaler intermixing with the vampire motif.
Who never died. That's why, even that chick Beth, or the lady who was bathing in the blood, she never died. She's not technically a vampire. If you go by the actual, it's funny how they get all thrown into.
It's a melting pot.
And just like one quick thing, sorry that I interrupted you, Doc. I get so excited talking about this. The one funniest thing is that like there was a guy who like even back then was like hearing these claims about like all this weird paranormal stuff, and he was like, he was even I think a church dude, and he's like, I'm gonna start like investigating these things, and that's how you get a lot of work actually about vampirism. He was even like going to these places, and he's like, you want to explain to me how this person got out of the grave without the dirt being moved? Like it's just a simple question like that should have squashed the whole thing. How did the guy get out of the fucking grave if the dirt hasn't been moved, but yet it was a physical body? You're not saying it's his spirit. You're saying his physical body came out and bit you in the neck. You want to tell me how the fuck he got out of the ground? It's not even fucking moved.
Right. That's a good point.
A question like that should have squashed the whole fucking hysteria. You're like, you're crazy.
But it goes to the problem of mass hysteria and individuals who don't think for themselves, and they just lead to like a mob mentality, or all of a sudden people just freak out and then they just pass this stuff along.
All right, go ahead.
Exactly. Is that so when it comes to because like the Catholic Church, all that kind of stuff, do you tie that in with like the Druids, and like you're saying that the Catholic Church or whatever churches, whatever religion, kind of stomped this bloodline out is kind of what you're saying. So do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm at the Druids in the trees.
Nice hit.
Yeah. So so the Druids were that's the thing, because he makes these associations, and he believes that the Druids are from this Scythian line, this draconian line, dragon court. But Druids were associated with groves. The Druids, as priest kings of the dragon, were connected specifically to the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. This was the symbolism behind the Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and Shaktric system. The Tree of Life is a genealogical chart of gods. In Viking lore, it is their sacred tree Yggdrasil, and with a coiled serpent at the base by a pool. The most sacred tree to the Druids, he claims, was not the oak, but the apple tree. And that's why the tree in Eden has been portrayed as an apple tree, but can be interchangeable with the pomegranate. The apples represents the glands of the female body. The apples of red gold produced the enriched vaginal womb blood that was consumed by both male and female druids, the serpents or dragons in the tree. In Kabbalah, and this is their claims here, but in Kabbalah, both Jesus' mother and wife were called crystal wombs of whence shined forth the light of the world. So this strongly suggests the concept of starfire, which is also the consumption of menstrual cycle blood of the goddess. Also, in Viking mythology, the goddess Eden offers her red apples to the gods to keep them healthy and young. So he's drawing all these correlations, how they're all rhyming here. And here's goes kind of what you were talking about, Nick, about the consumption of blood and only certain things being consumed. His claims in his book, he says that if you take supplements like HRT, you should know that it comes from the urine of either mares or French nuns. Melatonin was the primary hormone extracted in the blood rites of Diana. So it's your choice, LOL. Others include, he said, oxytocin, prolactin, serotonin, adenosine triphosphate, dopamine, telomerase, and retinol. But the Scythian warriors were bloodthirsty at times, helping with the vampire and werewolf imagery that the Romans reported, describing them as eating the flesh and drinking the blood of their fallen foes in battle. And this was obviously a corruption of the earlier practices. Drinking the blood of a friend or foe in battle was common practice in Scotland to obtain strength, thus clogging your arteries with someone else's adrenaline.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Hey, I just pulled something up which is interesting about the I'd never heard the idea of the apple tree being like more of a druid, like the druids tree that they liked more than the oak tree, but it makes sense only because of what I just pulled up, and who knows, fact check me. This is druidry.org/druidway/teachings and practices. The sacred druid plant and tulak or mistletoe is often found on apple trees, making it an especially holy tree to the druids along with the oak. And in the Irish Druid tradition, the silver bow is cut from a magical apple tree where silver apple-shaped bells played a mystical tune, which could lull people into a trance state. Druids could make contact with the other world during a trance enhanced by this apple tree. The apple tree is closely linked to druids in their aspect as magicians and shamans. The tree is often used when the druid undergoes a magical transformation or journey into the other world. And then it goes on and says more than that. So that's kind of cool. And it also says the apple tree is a sacred symbol of immortality, deep wisdom, and the other world, often linked to prophecy and magical transformation. Considered a noble tree, it bridges the mortal realm with the divine and is frequently associated with Avalon, the Isle of Apples. So that's cool. And in another way, we can see how the Abrahamic traditions have inverted this fucking story and mythology of the apple into being something evil, and using the high priestess
That's not even
Eve,
Hebraic,
right?
though. You know,
Okay.
'cause, it's what do you call it? When somebody tells you a story so many times, you finally believe it, even though it's not factual. Mandela effect. I was always told about the apple tree, but when you go back and read the Bible, there is no apple tree. It just says Eve partook of the tree.
Oh,
It's
right.
just
Yeah.
through this influence, it
I've,
became
I've
an
that
apple
might have been
tree.
you. Did you do a reel on that
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I was like, oh fuck, I never even knew that.
So they
Yeah.
don't ever say she ate of the apple. She says she just partook of the tree of good and evil, or a
Yep.
knowledge of real. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and then through time it gets changed. You add that in there so we could demonize a whole population of mystics and shamans and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you get
Either that, or they've seen the people talking about the apple trees, and it got them to the other world, and it gave knowledge from the other side through the ancestor worship, and they just kind of made that correlation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
Like,
makes sense.
like we've talked about, we've seen several examples of that already just in our little discussion today.
Yeah,
People
this
make
is great.
jumps and associations, you know?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Or even just like her, you know, by making it the apple, you kind of create its own mythology for other types of people to kind of maybe tie in this ancient bloodline in like a not in a bad way, but they just tied it in for their own records, you know, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So let's see. I got here the Elvins, like they talk about the royals. They keep it in the family. They like to interbreed, keep the bloodline pure. That's what the Dragon Court did because they thought the power was in the blood. So they practice really selective breeding, and this is actually stems back to ancient Phoenicia and Egypt also. So the Elvins practiced what they called Phoenician and or pharaonic marriage. Phoenicians would practice the union between father and daughter. And let's see, the Pharaonic practiced the union between brother and sister. So that's where you get the Osiris and Isis. They were brother and sister. But in horse breeding world, this produces the finest and healthiest thoroughbreds when you go to the union of the father and the daughter. And according to geneticists, because everybody talks about, interbreeding, causes all these defects and things like that. According to geneticists at Cambridge University, that you can continue interbreeding up to 300 years and or 10 generations before there's any genetic problems. So basically he was saying that for 300 years and or 10 generations, they would interbreed to try to keep the bloodline as pure as they could. But, every so often they would have to bring in a mudblood, so to speak, just to keep from having the birth defects and things like that, to try to keep the blood as pure as possible.
Wow.
Okay, it says that, and they're Grail maidens, these women that we're talking about that offered their blood and their secretions, because it wasn't just blood, it was their sexual secretions too.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So they called these the Grail maidens, and it says these Grail maidens were treated as goddesses and almost worshipped, believed to be the incarnation of the nurturing dragon goddess Dia Volna Gnosis. So it's even got Gnosis in her name, the goddess that gives the blood of knowledge. And I had an interesting note here in the book of Revelation. It talks about the whore of Babylon, right? And she's riding this red dragon, and it says, and in her cup, and you read the English, it says her cup is full of abominations. But when you go to the Greek, it says porneia. So she has a cup full of her porneia. So the Christian perspective, seeing people drinking vaginal secretions, and blood, I mean, that's pornographic. That's porneia. And riding the dragon, they had these magi schools and gnosis schools that they would put these dragon court people through. And you had mentioned Vlad the Impaler earlier, Dracula. He's even have said to have graduated from this school. And when you read the historical text, it says that he was noted to have ridden the dragon. And De Vere says that is referring to that school, that the elite, the chosen ones that went to this school of draconian mysticism and mystery, when they graduated, they were have said to have ridden the dragon. So I think that had an influence on the writing of Revelation. I think that whoever wrote the book of Revelation was hearing about these schools, hearing about people graduating from the mysticism and riding the dragon and drinking the vaginal secretion. That's why she was riding the dragon with her cup of porneia. I think there's just too many correlations to be coincidence there.
Sorry. I'm going to stop you. So it's like I can't even keep up with the amount of symbols and different stories I've heard that you
in my own head.
Yeah. And so I just want to bring up the one when we're talking about, drinking from that holy cup, right? So it's the idea in the Taoist sexual kung fu style of practices. We all must know that like tantric practices and sexual magic and kung fu and stuff like that is all practice on your own by yourself, just understanding your own energy structures. And then the highest of all practices is that sacred marriage between the king and the queen and whatnot. But the idea is that when you're doing these things, when it is on the highest of all realms with a partner or your loved one or something like that, they talk about in Chinese mythologies and mysticism in the Taoist practices and sexual kung fu practices is that you are when you're in the throes of the secretions of the feminine and whatnot, they call that the jade dew. And what's is fascinating is that you are to be drinking of that first because you want the feminine to get excited because they are the high priestess that is moving us into the rest of, if to use the Kabbalistic terms, moving it on into the moon, right, which is the Yesod and the ninth Sephirah, up into the rest of the imaginal realms, imaginal, not imagination. And when you're doing that, you can move your way up into the divine realms of the gods up higher realms in uniting with the divine. Fascinating enough, we're also speaking about the dragon ley lines of the earth, but you yourself have that coiled dragon and serpent that is wrapped around the base of your spine. And they speak of the meridian pathways that you're igniting when you are doing your own practices, that you're trying to balance these things out. Thus, another way of, and or when you're in the throes of this romantic eros, in unifying that sacred marriage, you are doing just that. You are unifying your internal dragon pathways with the feminine dragon pathways, thus creating this higher magic. So I just want to state that it's fascinating because so fast we want to get into, like the more lewd understandings of these things, which they do have that, but it's not lewd. It's not Christian mythologized into something that is negative, like sexuality should be something that is bad, but it means that you should get into contact with your own levels of sexuality, which means your own eros, your own passion, your passion with your own mystical and magical practices. Thus, you can magnetize yourself to find your cohort so you can move along this and then unify yourself into that demiurgos. So that's my initial
and that's what I was saying earlier. I mentioned the tantric and the chakra, because that's what he's doing. He's showing all these things, saying it all stems back to this ancient source. So that was the major influence and starting point. And the book of Revelation, like I said, I was talking with where Nick made that comment, I was like, this is from the Christian perspective. To them, it's sacred. It's not, obscene at all, but to them, it was, obscene. So then therefore they really magnified it in their work, and them as the Christian. Is that what you're talking about? Them? Yes. Yeah. And I think they do that. The priest class likes to make, and it's very Nietzschean to state the priest class makes the master slave dichotomy. And so you don't want your slaves to know that they could do more than just make babies. It's like you can make babies, but also you could reach a higher state of intelligence when you actually understand the kind of magic that is in the love process. Yeah, Kaiba.
Yeah, no, what's interesting about just going back to like the location of the Caucasus Mountains, supposedly that is where Noah's Ark was found. So that's kind of like the idea of like the Yamnaya culture is this like group that's like been up in the Caucasus Mountains, supposedly descendants of Noah. Like these are just things I've heard, and like there is really good evidence for it. So it is interesting to think about even that tying into the Bible, and like how you read something, you have to read it 5 different ways to understand it's from your own perspective. So if you're geared into the terminology and the symbolism, you're going to read it correctly for how it was written for maybe this dragon race, whatever. So it is interesting, like that area is so potent, and so it's interesting how like the Bible it ties in an interesting way with Noah and all that kind of stuff.
And Prometheus, that's where he was chained to the Caucasus Mountains, and he was the one that brought the fire, the wisdom, and the knowledge. So I mean, this is a very ancient place that humanity stemmed from. I think we're looking in the wrong place. Everybody looks to the Levant in Mesopotamia and says that this is the start of all life. Now I believe it was up there in Greater Scythia, and then the influences migrated south and then south east, and that's kind of what he maps out in the book too. But interesting, stone circles. He talks about that, and I'd never heard this before, but it kind of stems from these guys too. Let me see. He claims that the word church came from the dragon court also, and that it derives from the word Circe, which is, interesting correlations, Circe in the, the Caucasus Mountains, the high priestess. But it says, and the old Highland euphemism for going to the word kirk. It was actually going to the stones, referring to the stone circles, which I thought was pretty cool. And then you have all the Transylvanian and Irish tales of these whales, and that kind of goes into this too. He says this is all tied into that, and it goes to the fairy folk, and even the garter is a symbol for this dragon court, and it's the Ouroboros. So they had these red cords and red garters that symbolized the Ouroboros, and it pointed to this legiancy and the symbolism of this dragon court and what later people would identify as witches. And he points out this song and poem of, let me see, La Belle Dame Sans Merci. She was immortalized in Keats in the poem by the same name. It says, in England during the 1300s, this vampire maiden was the Maid of Kent. And it said, some believe she was the Countess of Salisbury. And it was recorded at a summer's ball in Callisis. She let her garter slip. It says, King Edward III retrieved it with haste, holding it high, proclaiming, shamed be the person who thinks evil of it. And this motto can be found as the garter surrounding the shield of the royal coat of arms for the United Kingdom. Professor Margaret Murray asked the question, why was this recorded as the king's response? And why was it so over the top? Why threaten people's attitude towards an article of a woman's undergarment, if it didn't have some kind of special significance? And he's saying that, yes, it did. And he talked about the garter being the symbol of the dragon court and the Ouroboros. And they also called it the witch's belt, the devil's badge. And they said it was a dynastic emblem of the fairy race that descended from Lilith and Cain. And the Order of the Garter was founded by Edward III in 1399. And that same garter is in the symbolism of the reestablished dragon court by Sigismund in 1408.
That's really interesting. You know what this just made me think of, Brandon? Even if you know this, you'd be like, "Wow, that's so random." Did you ever read any of Lon Milo stuff?
Oh yeah, I love Lon Milo. I'm gonna try to get him on.
Yeah, I've been trying to. I don't think he will. Actually, I don't think he likes me, to tell you the truth. Unfortunately. I would love to get him on still. I think he's very interesting, man. I think he's extremely smart, actually. But he mentioned in like one of his books, I think he was like trying to do an exorcism for somebody, or like an exorcism of a house, or like clean it out. And like he was working with like goetic spirits, or so he wanted to do it with, I think, the Goetia. But like he had to start somewhere first and then like go to the place afterwards. And he's like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. And like somehow he made his circle like out of a string or something.
Yeah.
Well, then he can tie it around his waist and tie it. And technically I haven't left my circle when I get to the next place. So he's got a rope.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and it actually was like literally his magical circle that he transported with him. I was like, what the fuck?
That's hilarious. I mean, and that gives to the idea that all things are magic. And so it's like you're using this magical implement that you're in training, and then all of a sudden you're like, I actually need it here. I'm just gonna. And he's such a silly man to let alone. That is, it's hilarious. Nice. That's good.
Yeah,
because your garter here is another meridian line of that keeps you in balance. So when you're training Tai Chi and Qigong practices, you're doing the up and down vertical practices, but at the same time, there's practices to help with your girdle meridian itself, which if that's out of balance, you can't walk properly. So fascinating connection.
Mm-hmm.
He made a connection too with the Cathars in his book. I remember recently reading that. He said that they wore the blue and black cloaks with the red string around their waists, and he said that red cord is once again signaling to the dragon court and the Ouroboros, but it also goes back to he said the red cord that was used to tie around the horns of Azazel, the scapegoat in the Old Testament, and that he said that kind of ties into the Baphomet imagery also. But he was saying that that's why they wore that. And when you mentioned that guy, his cord around, he was always in his magic circle. It reminded me of that story of the Cathars and their red circled cord that they wore over their cloaks.
Nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. Somebody just said the red bracelet, and isn't that like some billionaires wearing a red bracelet made it for his sons too? Who is that?
It's like a Kabbalah bracelet too. People call it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but somebody like some tech billionaire wears one, has his sons. I can't remember who it is though.
Yeah, a bunch of them do.
Well, Kushner, wears it. Yeah, Kushner
Oh,
wears
Kushner,
it.
that's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'll keep going here. I'm kind of, like I said, I'm building to the crescendo. I know you guys want to hear about that Song of Solomon. That really blew my mind. But all that stuff that I'm talking about, it ties directly into it. It's building you a foundation for it. So they had the sacred whales, the serpent. He makes all these other correlations with these other cultures. The serpent dragon, Yogamander in the Viking lore, he encircles and coils around the base of the world tree Yggdrasil. At its root is a pool. In Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, this is the same theme that they repeat, and they talk about the hazel tree by a well. In the well lives a salmon of knowledge. And it says, on top of the tree is an eagle who drops a blood red nut of wisdom into the well 13 times a year. And many ancient calendars record 13 months. Don't know if that's a correlation or not, but it says, and there that red nut of wisdom is consumed by the salmon of knowledge. So not all fairy whales, he said, were actual water sources. Why has my camera's been doing that here recently? Anytime I hold up fingers, I get a green orb.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
You
I
got
want to reset
a
the
Mac or
camera.
something? That is funny.
Yeah, I got an Apple.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. It's probably a balloon or some shit.
You just got some real vibes going on.
Got super vibes going.
You know what I'll do? You know what? While you're fixing that, I'll say something real quick, and not to get like too off, or I'm not saying that this is always the case, but and not of course I'm going to go into the whole physiology shit.
Yeah.
But like even when it comes to the snake, stuff that I've seen in tarot cards, even especially on Hermit card, on the Magical Golden Dawn deck, I do think that sometimes snakes is used symbolically to show two things in the eyeball, possibly the pupil, because your pupil actually spirals closed. And I do think sometimes maybe the snake eating itself is showing that it's like something kind of closing in on itself.
Yes. Yeah, it's alchemical, because he talks about that. He says it's when the dragon when the serpent consumes itself like a butterfly in the cocoon, it evolves into something greater. So he's saying that's what he's saying. He thinks they're talking about is by consuming itself, they're drinking the secretion and vaginal flow. And I wish I knew how to turn that shit off. It pisses me off. It does that shit to me all the time.
It's all right, man. It's cool. I've had that plenty of times with guests. It's pretty funny.
But yeah, so he says that by consuming the blood and by consuming the vaginal secretion of themselves, of their family line, they graduate basically into a dragon.
Yeah. Oh, then just real quick, the other thing I wanted to mention is when the hyaloid canal bends, when your pupil dilates or gets bigger, your canal can bend or straighten out. I think the snake is symbolizing that. But I definitely do think that's one of the Golden Dawn decks. I think that's what they're showing you. As weird as it sounds. Even the Hermit, it's going to sound crazy. Did you ever see the Hermit card with the Golden Dawn deck where it's like the guy with the hood and he's holding like the stick?
Yeah, the Caduceus.
Well, yeah. So yeah. And then there's like a snake underneath him too. Actually, if you go and look up, this is gonna be crazy, but I don't know. It's a theory of mine. If you go and look up what the Zonyals of Zin look like under like a micro, like whatever, one of those crazy microscopes, looks literally like a hooded figure holding a stick in its hand.
Oh, interesting.
And that all controls how you're. I do think that it's just so possibly, if you want to attribute any physiology to Kabbalah, that the machinery of visions and kind of like that shit, that is when the Zonyals of Zin is what moves your lens actually in your eyeball, and then that starts directing light and changing all shit, going back, going forward. I do think that's actually in tarot, and it's in symbolism.
That's super cool, especially for the Hermit card.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Sorry to run off on that. I just figured I'd take up some time since Justin was having problems.
Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna sit on my hands and not use them. That's really hard for me.
Are you Italian at all? That would be impossible.
Yeah. But the whales, though, he said, not all of them were water sources. That archaeologists have found a lot of them, and they're like they're either spiral staircases going down into like ritualistic chambers. And he says that he thinks that story, of the salmon of knowledge being in the whale and the red nut dropping down, and wisdom and knowledge meeting together is allegory of these Grail maidens and these ceremonies. That the Grail maiden is that salmon of knowledge that the men go down into the abyss, the watery grave to get, and it's symbolic for the hero's journey. You're going into the abyss. It's the death of the ego and transcending into higher consciousness. He said, and you see this with imagery of nymphs. You see it imagery of mermaids and sirens, all these watery abyss deaths, that they take you down into. I'm trying to think, Melusine in the maze. The Melusine's at the center of the maze, and her black cube that secretes the living water. That is the virgin. The man goes into the labyrinth to get the prize, but it's associated with death and life, because you're dying and then resurrecting. And he said that's basically why they get so upset with Christians and the baptism, because they see it as a perversion of their ancient practice. So you have that whole thing with the whales, the labyrinth, and he said that later they stole this imagery and used it for the wild hunt. And I'm trying to think, in Persephone, all the Greek legends, Persephone goes down into the underworld and comes back. The Odyssey, Homer, Morpheus, all these guys that go into the abyss, the underworld. And that's kind of what they're all allegorized and talking about. Was, like I say, was interesting because I'd never seen it from that point of view. And then he goes into, let me scroll down because I'm skip a little bit. The symbology of lilies and roses. And he says, and here's where it kind of gets into Solomon. Even that, he thinks, is symbology for these Grail maidens and the vulva and things like that. The lily of the valley, that's something that's mentioned in the Song of Solomon. And the Lilas and Nymphea, Nyphaea, lotus, they are regional variants, both pertaining to dragon lore. The former is of the Iris family, and I thought it was funny. It kind of brought to my mind the Goo Goo Doll song, Iris. And you remember that movie? It was about angels coming down and breeding with the daughters of men. I thought that was kind of cheeky. I didn't know if they did that on purpose. But this includes the lily of the valley also. The latter, is a species known as the Blue Nile lilies. And in alchemical lore, the lily represents the vaginal seminal fluid of the vulva, and the rose represents the womb blood. But even the white lily produces red berries in the fall, resembling themselves as red droplets of blood. The lily of the valley is highly toxic and can be fatal, which is a reminder to them. Once again, like I said, the death and resurrection, it says, reminding them of the love that is death, the ego death. And it says in vampirism, the process of an awakening is called the quickening. So he kind of made that correlation. But he said nymphs and naiads are often depicted with nymphea lotuses in their hair, and is known as the lily sacred to the nymphs. So once again, it's tying these nymphs to this watery grave, to this kind of ritualistic stuff here. And he brings up Jason and the Argonauts. He says they were sailing around in Scythia, in Scythian waters, looking for the golden fleece. And Devere claims that this is another symbol for the Grail. And that they beach at this island of Chiros to look for food and supplies. And they send this guy named Halus to go find a spring, to find fresh water. And as he's going along, he stumbles across these emissaries of death, these nymphs bathing into the pool. So the Lady of the Lake imagery, but it says these nymphs were bathing, and there were 7 of them in total, and he believes it was representing the Pleiades. But in Waterhouse's painting of this scene has some hidden nuggets in there. That Halus is wearing I mentioned this earlier, a blue-black robe tied with a red cord. Talking about the scapegoat, I mentioned that earlier. Yeah, water was symbolic for chaos and death, and also with Enki, Lord Enki, because they go all the way back to the Sumerian and Akkadian stories. So,
you
they are-
mentioned lilies and lotuses.
Mhm.
One thing I just want to say about that real quick, this may have nothing to do with it, but it's something that I happen to remember because I realized that I've heard these. I mean, those are pretty famously known, I think, images of flowers to be used in like a lot of different art and symbolism. I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I know lotus, I think lotus can shift from male to female on its own to try to actually reproduce within itself. Lilies can't do that, but it does have both sexes present in the flower at one time. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but again, like when we start getting into sexual stuff of showing male and female or things intermingling, who knows? Like, those. I wonder if those flowers come into play because of that.
Oh, it could very well. I know, like from my BC days, pot, can be male or female, and then be what do they call that? When they're hermaphrodites, and you get all the seeds in your miniature pot.
Yeah.
But these nymphs, it says their embrace was said to spell death. These girls are the Shunammite, the lilies or virgins, who are portrayed in the Song of Solomon. They are the wells of living water. In Tantric Kalua ritual, it says the inflaming of the chakra of the uterine region to produce the waters of life. Is the Song of Solomon, this is a question, so is the Song of Solomon a sacred marriage ritual? And so he makes that connection there. He says that these girls are the priestesses of Lilith, Diana, and Persephone. They represent Melamine, or I'm sorry, it probably changed me on autocorrect, Melusine, Magdalene, and the Maid of Kent. Yeah, and the Aurora Borealis. So, and then it goes into lotus eaters. In the Greek, the Lotophagi, Lothaga, but it means lotus eaters, which Halus' story is related, experienced similar stories with consuming the Nymphia lotus and losing their desire to return home, and that they had forgotten. He's referring to Homer and the Odyssey. They go to this island of witches, and they give them this wine, and all of a sudden they don't remember home. They don't want to leave. They're spellbound. He's saying that that's the lotuses that was put into the wine that made them that way.
Yeah, now it's the modern day Molly eating ecstasy children that go to festivals are our modern day new age lotus eaters.
Yes, that's funny.
I laugh because it's true.
Yeah. Okay, so now the Song of Solomon. Okay, the thing you guys been waiting for. Sorry, I had to kind of lay all that stuff down for
That's great.
people. I know you guys are well versed in it, but I wasn't. So when I read this stuff, it was the first time for me. So I wanted to tell people all that background. That way, when they hear this story, they make all those connections. So in the Song of Solomon, he has Sheba, and she's described as a well of living waters. In a labyrinth garden filled with sacred pomegranate trees. And we see more symbolic representations of the virgin priestess goddess with the works like Sir Richard Burton's Perfumed Garden and Francis Israel's Garden of Pomegranates. Gives us a clear picture that the forest as a pubis, like the maze as the entrance to the other world. And the Song of Solomon, it mentions the Rose of Sheri or Sharon. Says that Sharon is a fertile plain between Jaffa and Mount Carmel in Israel. There is dispute over the meaning of the word rose. First one is crocus.
That's interesting.
Polyanthus, narcissus, and cistus. This is a gardening encyclopedia will tell you that the Rose of Sharon is described as a hypericum or St. John's wort and produces a red dye that is related to cistus. The cistus looks a lot like the western rose, and it's called the rock rose in southern Europe and northern Africa. The cistus is white with deep blood red blotches like the dappling of menstrual blood, and is also known as the gum cistus from the genus Landifer, from which is obtained Landinum, the dream-bestowing prize of poets and visionaries. Sheba as the lily of the Nile Valley, the Nymphea lotus and rose of Sharon, the Landifer, was likened to the living narcotic pharmacopoeia. Sorry. So there he's saying about talking about Sheba in this Song of Solomon and calling her the lily of the valley, that he's insinuating they're talking about the Nile Valley and this Landifer, which was a narcotic. So it's basically saying that, you know, her in this song, she's like a drug. She gets him high, you know, and gives him enlightenment. So they're making that correlation there with the symbology of it. And the rose represents the magical menstrual flow of Solomon's beloved. The name Sharon or Sarah means princess, therefore insinuating royal blood. The sangreal or the sangreal, blood of the Holy Grail, or the Rosy Crucis, as in the Latin Rosa Sarah or Rosary, the Virgin Mary. The pure white lily is itself I think I heard one of you guys mention this earlier, the dew of the princess. So, and I heard you guys talking about the tarot cards. He's got something like that in here too. The word rose in Germanic means horse, from Hieros, a deity like the goddess Rhiannon or Epona, who were symbolized by the white mare, like Odin's white mare Sleipnir, who likewise was a transporter to other worlds. The earlier mentioned gods were associated with death. Sleipnir is reminiscent with its white draped funeral bier carried by 4 men, who, like Sleipnir, has 8 legs. Card 13 in the major arcana of the Rider-Waite Tarot is entitled Death. 13 is the number of the moon and menstrual cycle. It represents death and rebirth of the new life. The skull and crossbones on the reins of the horse represent the Baphomet / Holy Grail. They also have twin towers in the background, which are horns, with the sun coming up in the middle. The towers, like the horns of the inverted pentagram, I mentioned that earlier, represent the spread legs of the maiden. The sun between them, like the fire between the horns of the pentagram, is the star fire. And with the arms of the goat coming out to the side. But it says this symbol is replicated in the second card, the High Priestess, again symbolizing the love that brings death. Symbolic death and resurrection. The white rose of the spirit and pure love is identical to the red rose of Sharon, and he makes the correlations to Venus's emerald jewel, the tablets of destiny, the Leia flail for the Scythians, the jewel of Satan's crown, the oozing black monolith inside of the maze of Melusine. So I'll stop there, but I'm completely ignorant with the tarot cards. Does that sound right to you guys, or is he just making stuff up that's not there? I don't know nothing about those.
The way I look at tarot cards are kabbalistically, so I wouldn't expect them to look at it like that. But
Kaiba, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think, Kaiba? You're probably better for that.
I don't use the Rider-Waite deck, but I think, I mean, sure, why not? Like, I think, you know, it's like you can make anything out of like this. That's what's tricky, I think, sometimes about tarot is like people throw images on them. And I'm not saying like Rider-Waite obviously didn't throw images on those ones, but, you know, imagery isn't necessarily the thing we always look to with the tarot, because it's more symbolic of the concept and the makeup and where it sits and how it relates. So, I mean, sure, he can pull those For the sake of his book, sure.
Yeah, right.
See, I didn't know like the imagery that he was describing, if that's what's actually on the cards. You know, I didn't know. If
Oh
that's,
yeah, the Rider-Waite one. I don't have the Rider-Waite one.
Oh no, I think
So
I do. It's right here.
Okay.
I don't get the towers and horns.
What imagery specifically? Can you remind me? Like what the one specific one you're talking about is?
He said it was the
Death card.
One
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said it had the Rider of Death, and that there was skull and crossbones on the reins. There was towers in the background, and in between was the sun.
Mm.
And the rose on the flag. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is, the sun in the back. So the sun's in between the two towers, and what's fascinating about these things is, so they're taking, again, like Nick just said, they're like, when you're using the Rider-Waite deck, they're using the Kabbalah mixed with Hermetic philosophies, mixed with Christian mythologies. Rider-Waite was deeply integrated into Christian mysticism and esotericism, as well as taking from Eliphas Levi's Rituals at Dogma, and his other book. And because of Levi is one of the first people who speaking and taking from Agrippa's work, right? So all these people are just moving through history and amalgamating and changing and taking, and because they're trying to come up with a system so people can have mnemonics for magical astral temple working within the mind. And so it's not just straight up divinatory practices, which can be done. Obviously, Kava can speak on a lot of that kind of stuff and helping people in their life. But the idea more is that when you're tapping into these things, they're symbolic, especially the major arcana is symbolic, not as the individual pathway working through his own process of individuation, right? Death isn't physical all the time. Most of the time, it's actually not. It's the dying of the old ego as you're passing from one passageway and paradigm of life into the next. And so the death card itself actually more along, if I were to say what it means that you're dying of your old life and being born again into a new life.
Yeah, that's what he was kind of saying. He was saying that he believed it alluded to the whole drinking of the blood, the going into the abyss, or resurrecting as nude, a death of the ego, and that kind of thing. But like I said, I wasn't familiar with the cards. I didn't know if he was just making that stuff up or if that imagery that he was describing was actually on there or not.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it looks like it was.
No, it
One thing I
definitely
did
is.
want to mention that I found interesting, you were talking about the rose before a lot. I think there was something where you brought it up.
Mhm.
I don't know what made me think about it, but there was, when I was talking earlier, even about Crowley with the voice and the vision. If I find it, because there's so many images that I have. If I find that, I would like to present that one for sure. There's like, he had a girl at one point, Rose. And a lot of people think that I think, my opinion, when he's talking about her, I wouldn't necessarily say it's her, because I can show how he was doing the math for Rose to insert that into the voice and the vision. So at that point, it's like, you're obviously not talking about her, but it sounds like you are.
That's
I
fascinating.
think, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I found it interesting how you're even going on about the rose here and how that was even ciphered into his own work.
Let alone being used in the Rosicrucians, the Rose and Cross, being these two, again, aspects of feminine and masculinity, the masculine and the feminine representations and symbols as you move upon your evolution of consciousness. That's kind of what we're talking about here, is how does consciousness of the individual seed egg be born into infantilism, from there into this innocence, and from innocence break innocence into experience and evolve into adulthood on forward. And so it's that progression of our own consciousness into the world.
Oh yeah. I think that shit like gets very, very deep too. Like, even if you think about it, I mean, you can get pricked and bleed from touching a rose stem. So even have blood can even start coming into play. And then, like, even if you look at the Kabbalah, between Netzach and Gabor, I do think there is different ways of plays off of the rose, technically, in a sense. But if you even look at like making a talisman, if you were to use if you were to use, let's say, Netsock, you wanted to make a talisman for Netsock, you would use green, and then the suggested flashing color would be red because there's an association between Netsock and Gabora. So, even going back to the rose again, like I'm just saying, like you even see between red and green, which would be a rose, the red flower, the green stem. Even Kabbalistically, you're even seeing roses hermetically. The Hermetic Kabbalah, you're even seeing roses showing up as a symbol for one of them or both. Somehow they're played off of each other.
And that Scythian fairy race, they're red-haired and green-eyed.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I'll get into the specifics of it now. I got all that done. Let's see. The Song of Solomon is a blood rite, a communion where the wine, the blood of the virgin goddess is drunk. Solomon's harem was a blood farm, and the females in it were there to feed him, and it increased his wisdom and lengthened his life. So this has underlining hermetic and esoteric characters. It's said to have been compiled around 400 BC, but it's also said to be derived from oral sources. And the genre, and I think when you guys mentioned this earlier, is Egyptian love poetry. The temple school was destroyed and its teachers dispersed during the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. So many Christian nobles fled Palestine, bringing the vampiristic practices into Central Europe. And the same goes for many rabbis and Kabbalists. This explains the appearance of the Solomonic schools in Europe. It is these institutions that Dracula was said to have ridden the dragon. He got his name from the Egyptian cult of Drago. But it says, with his many wives and thirst for knowledge, much fairy lore, and there's many gods of Eurasia that filtered through the Holy Land during Solomon's reign. And it was well accepted that his practices, that he had practices of hermetic sciences and dark magic. It is recorded that Solomon had 700 wives that were royal princesses gathered from all the nations around the known world. And he also had 300 concubines. It's rather excessive, and it was a large cost to the man. You can think about how much money it cost to keep up all these women. And he had them all in this central building, and it had to be important, right? So his women were housed in what they called a harem. And harem is taken from the Arabic word haram, which means sacred or prohibited place. The harem was known as the sacred or spiritual place. So this word in Hebrew was harim, which translates to ban, something set aside for cultic use. So, quote, he feeds amongst the lilies. And so the Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 16, Sheba enjoins Solomon to feed amongst the lilies until the break of day, like a young hart on the mountains of Bether. A lily is a virgin, and thus Solomon by night feeds amongst the virgins, the virgin princesses of his harem. So it says a fertility ritual / sacred marriage. So chapter 2, verse 16, quote, says, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds among the lilies until the break of day, and the shadows flee away. Turn, my beloved, and be thou like a roe or a young hart upon the mountains of Bether. So that's the end quote there. But it says, feeding on lilies is the blood and water of the virgin brides. The hart symbolized by the young stag drinking from the brook, which is the whale / Grail symbology we've seen earlier. This is related to chapter 4 and verse 12, where it says, quote, a garden enclosed is my sister, a spring shut up, and a fountain sealed, end quote. So enclosed and sealed, signaling her purity and virginity, the underground hidden stream, the blood flow and secretion. Chapter 4, verse 13, quote, thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits. So here's the pomegranate. You're seeing all this imagery that I've showed you throughout this discussion. That's the end quote. It says, "To them, the living waters is related to the Holy Spirit, which is also referred to as fire. They believe the Holy Spirit and Shekinah to be feminine. She gives the gift of the living water, aka starfire. And they claim the skull and crossbones was meant to signal what we're talking about here. The skull was between two leg bones facing the pelvic area, is what he claims. That it was misinterpreted, and that was what the original symbology was supposed to be, was this head between two leg bones, the thigh bones, facing toward the pelvic region. And then also in chapter 5, this is the last one, chapter 5, verse 4 through 5, quote, "My beloved put his hands by the hole of the door and my bowels were moved for him. I rose up to open my beloved, and my hands dripped with mirth, and my fingers with sweet-smelling mirth, the vaginal mucus, upon the handles of the lock, the lips." So the hole of the door is the keyhole. It's the opening of the vagina. And the handles is the labia. Her bowels that were being moved, she's describing an orgasm with her sticky fingers. So after reading that and seeing all that stuff and then rereading that, man, I think the imagery is pretty damning.
It was some wild shit. Yeah, I went down a total rabbit hole in my head on that shit. Wow.
I think I was watching you. I was watching everybody have a moment while you were like reading that. That's interesting. Changes like the whole idea of like the Seal of Solomon, really.
Yeah. That's why I
in my
wanted
mind,
to
'cause
wait to the end. That was the bombshell.
Mhm.
Fuck. You know, there's so much of that shit really made me. I hate to go back into it. I'm not going to explain it because it would take forever. And I really should cover this topic a little bit more than I did in the past. But like that really, there was so much stuff in that really made me think about the eyeball. I hate to say it. Even with like the water and the blood in the back of your eyeball is blood, but not in the front. That's to get like, you know, but fuck, that shit was wild. Like for me, looking at it as the way that I always look at the way the eyeball changes and shit and the symbology, to me, it was just like, what? That's fucking insane. Like even the vitreous nerves that hang in the back of your eyeball, that hang in the back of the blood. I would say using pomegranates and those like little things that they have in there would be a good way to represent something. The way the vitreous nerves can look like. It looks like if you show the hyaloid canal going straight up your eyeball and then the vitreous nerves, it looks like a tree. You know, and the shit hanging from there looks like kind of like pomegranates.
Which I've read in that book too. He said that they use pomegranates a lot. Like for instance, I think he said it was a Jewish ritual. He said, but at marriage festivals or whatever, that they would crush pomegranates. It's kind of like a divination thing because they're so full of, you know, hundreds of seeds inside of them. And it was like they would crush them to see how many seeds was inside, as kind of like a forecasting of how fertile the bride's womb would be, you know, kind of referencing how many children that they would have. So even there, they're referencing this pomegranate to fertility.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, that really, like, that's where I went with it. There was so many things that you said that I was like, holy shit. Like even like the flowers, if you look at the Oris Arata and if you look at like the hyaloid canal again, you could look at it, it almost looks like a flower upside down, or it looks like a flower petal and everything. Very weird. Just sorry, but yeah, when you were reading that, there was a lot of symbolism that I've covered in the past that you were hitting on that I was like, oh my God, this is all shit that I've just, it's almost, even if you were to take the birth of Aphrodite, I've actually shown how I do think that's inside your eyeball. I even have a version of that tattooed on my own fucking arm. That's how serious I believe I'm onto something with this shit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like a fetish, but I'm into it, Nick.
Oh yeah, no, I gotta show. Yeah, you probably like never see me really talk about any of that shit because you're kind of like newer on the show. That was shit. I was hitting hard a few years ago. And I would like to
Nice.
get back into it. That's even why I covered recently, like I explained how sight works through your eyeball.
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Just to give people like a refresher course on shit that I covered in the past, because I do want to start getting back into the eyeball stuff.
I love that. You should write a book on it or a Substack or fucking go deep.
Yeah, no, I plan on it. Yeah,
Because not enough people are talking about that. I do think there's something really special about how our vision, because Merleau-Ponty talks about how the phenomenology of our perception is very intricate in how what our vision does and how important our vision is to the biophysiological experience of our consciousness in space. And so it's real. It's not, you're not just hitting on something that's not there. It's like, this is the windows to our soul for a reason.
Like even like you were talking about like fountains before, when your pupil starts to dilate and the zonulus starts moving everything, it makes a guy like a fleur de lis in there. And it even starts like the water even starts to look like a fountain. Yeah. And then above that is the vitreous humor, which that has blood that literally will follow the woman all the way down to the fucking womb. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Interesting. So was that the Song of Solomon is that what it's called? That you just read us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's actually written, I don't even know what that is. So like that's in the Bible?
Psalms. Yeah, that's in Psalms.
Psalms. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Psalms
So
are a
that,
bunch
what you
of
just read
magical.
us-
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. So you're connecting that to the dragon court through just like the ritual of the drinking blood and the whole thing like that?
Yeah. I mean, because all
Nice.
the symbolism is there. I mean, that's why when I read that, I was like, I seen the premise and I was like, man, that's kind of a stretch. Anybody can take anything and make it to what they want.
Yeah.
But then as he started laying out, the fountains, the maze of Melusine, the sacred wells, the grails, all that symbolism, throughout the world and all those rituals. And then he reread that psalm to me, and where I had that, reference point, I was like, oh my God, yeah, there's too many correlations here to be coincidence. And we know, even Christians know from the Bible and from teaching, they teach that, Solomon had, all these wives and delve into all these other, religions, world religions, and he was he had such a thirst for knowledge and wisdom, and that this stuff was circulating through the Levant at the time. So therefore, it's not out of the question that that's what he was talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, so just so yourself and Nick already hit on it, and I'm just going to repeat it, is that Psalms are known as magical invocations. They are known as practical Kabbalah. And so every one of those Psalms can be broken down into your ancient Hebrew, and then when you speak them aloud in invocatory language, like we would do in our ceremonial magical rituals, like when you would do the Kabbalist cross or your LBRP or any of these things, you're invoking them with a certain vibratory nature of the throat and chest. And when you're doing that, you are invoking this into the space. And so like Psalms 23, for instance, is something that even Israel Regardie uses, if you were to look online, at the end of his middle pillar exercise, as a protection spell or as a protection ritual or invocatory magical thing to be able to cleanse the space of negative energy or demons or whatever the hell you want to claim is around. But so it's fascinating that then you're connecting that, and this other guy's connecting that all together to claim whatever blood magic things that he's connecting to the higher sources of. Interesting enough, it continually makes me think of a guest that I've had on and Nick's had on, and he's going to have on again next week, Dr. Heather Lynn and her Anunnaki Revelations. And so it's a fascinating thing because she technically is hitting on that there is an ancient bloodline of oligarchic parasites who are vying for power, and that they think they are the divine right of kings, and that they have that divine right of kings, which is then why they're doing what they're doing to our civilization, because they have this ancient knowledge of the understanding of the cyclical nature of our planet terror as the planet goes through these cycles of
that could be exactly who she's referring to, and even with the the Christian paradigm too. I mean, the true Christian paradigm. There's a lot of people that claim, Christianity, and they have the whole whitewashed version. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like they'll look at Genesis 6, for instance, and say, "Oh, that's the good line of Seth breeding with the hoochie mama line of Cain, and they made spiritually wicked people." Hell no! It says the sons of God, the B'nai Ha Elohim, came down and bred with the daughters of men and created the Nephilim. So that's just, in my opinion, that's another version or wording of the Anunnaki, which this guy is saying that this is the story of the dragon court. It's the same story, in my opinion. It's just, what do you want to call it? We can be prideful and puffed up, and like we could all look at a rose, for instance, or a flower. We'll just say flower. It is beautiful red flower, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's a beautiful rose," and we're all looking at it, and then Brandon, you're like, "No, that's a beautiful orchid."
Everybody,
and Nick's like, "No, that's a lily."
Yeah.
Next thing you know, we're screaming at each other. It's like, we both know it's a flower. We all know it's a flower. We all agree that it's beautiful. Why the hell are we arguing over the name?
Yeah, because perception is a gamble. Husserl states that, the phenomenologist, because it's the number one thing. I think I stole it from Nick. He was going to say that out loud, because perception is a gamble. It's like we're continually mistaking maps for territories and arguing about what we think. And that's how we know that it's the same thing as like how we know that we don't know anything at all, is because we continually make these leaps that we know things before we do. And so that's interesting. I find that you speak so elegantly. It's almost like you use the term. So I have redneck blood. I just want you to know, from the farms of Southwest Minnesota. That's what I'm saying, bro. And so it's like, there's this, like, the priest of the redneck. And I think you speak so elegantly. So I do want you to know that's me just joking around, saying that you, I think you surpass what you think you know. And you do speak wonderfully about a really high level topic. And you are digging deep into something that I don't know about this guy who wrote this book, because I looked him up and he kind of looks sketchy. He's got this weird smile that I'm just question. I don't, but especially when people start talking about Anunnaki bloodlines and their lineage going back to these types of things, because technically, it's the same thing as saying that every U.S. president, and especially like Barack Obama, has lineage that goes back to the Merovingians, right? And this, and every U.S. president has that exact bloodline that goes back there. And I'm all like, that's a fascinating connection to show how, I think the easiest way to say is to show how actually interconnected all of us are. That we're all, and I think that's what I always want to bring to my listeners. And I think Nick is doing the same thing. Is that we're trying to state that we are all the descendants of God. And it doesn't mean that it's like an Abrahamic God, but we all, like Jesus says, or Buddha, or like whichever avatar that you're trying to go after, is that that no one can take your divine spark away from you. And the idea is that these signs and symbols and metaphors and myths that you're hitting on are our birthright. And maybe if we don't mistake the map for the territory, maybe we don't need to do blood rituals and to do all these things to be able to ascend to a higher state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. But if you can tap into this certain kind of magic and understand that is within you, and we don't have to always go to the most lewd things, but actually understand that within our everyday experience, we can ignite these centers, and thus we can live a better life. And so that's my little... Mm-hmm.
It's a biblical theme too. It says, "Don't you know the Spirit of God dwells within you?"
That's what I'm saying.
And then why would you go to the Catholic Church that wants to be the mediator and put a veil between you and the Creator? No.
No, I agree. Nice. That's what I'm saying. That's gnosis right there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very well said. Thank you, man. Thank you, Doc. That was great, man. I mean, honestly, I didn't know much about the so I thought this was like really interesting. Thank you.
No, I appreciate you just letting me nerd out and kind of lay it out for you.
Dude, you had me going. So yeah, wow, I definitely got to start covering what he was talking about a little bit more.
I'm a lot like Jordan Peterson, not intellectually, but like how he says when he gives his lectures, he's like, I don't know why you just come to see me. He said, I just work out problems he said that they're in my head out loud. He said, I figure it out as I talk about it. So that's me. I learn stuff as I read and talk about them and figure it out as I go.
Yeah, I do that too.
Also, I get that myself. Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. Again, that was fucking awesome. Thank you so much, Doc. That was great, man.
No, thank you for having me,
great.
man.
I agree.
Of course. It's always great when you come on. Before we let you plug all your stuff, Kaiva, why don't you remind everybody where they can find all your great work as well?
Yes. Yeah, this was a really fun conversation. I appreciate that. I appreciate a lot about it. So thank you. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Kaiva Rose. I post astrology daily and weekly. And you can also get a personal reading by going to 11kaivarose33.com. It's my website to schedule there. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you for making it. I appreciate it. And my man, Brandon, what is going on? So please let them all know what's up.
Yeah, thanks for such a great conversation, Doc Brown of Prometheus Lens Podcast. That's fascinating. I'm definitely I did subscribe to you with my off account that I use, but I'll also subscribe to you with Magus in the Media, because I just love your enthusiasm for understanding the greater secrets of things, no matter how you're doing it. So that's great. So everyone, make sure you go out there, subscribe to Doc Brown. Head over to Magus in the Media, subscribe to me as well. Like I said, I just dropped an interview. I got some more interviews coming out. We're crushing it. Jin the Ninja and I, if you want to check us out every Monday evening, him and I are having our own gonzo radio show. We're going to call it something eventually. We go deep and we go hard. I already told Nick this yesterday. I'm going to have Nick on. We're going to talk and we're going to do great things and we're going to explode the internet. So subscribe, like, and share to all my stuff. Head over to all the things. If you haven't had one of the greatest astrology readings of your life, please head over to 11kaivarose33, because she's the best there is. And that's just not me speaking from my heart. That's speaking from experience. And so it's just, we all need a little guidance in our life. And I think it's really important for us to understand how us, the world, and the stars all integrate together. And again, Nick, as always, so appreciated. Occult Rejects for life.
Hell yeah. Thank you very much, both of you. That was a blast. And Doc, my man, please let them all know what's up and where they can find all your amazing work, please, sir.
Nick, I appreciate it, man. And you guys, I appreciate you letting me talk and exchange ideas with you. And the thing I love so much about Nick's show, or from my personal experience anyway, I'm a Christian and I have a different perspective than some people. And this is a great smoldering pot. We can get together and just talk about what we believe, what we found. There's no bigotry here. There's no belittling and making fun of people here. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that's what I love, love, love. And I love you guys. And I appreciate you coming on and exchanging our ideas and findings with each other in a civil manner. That's a beautiful thing. And we don't have enough of that today. So thank you guys. But yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation and digging into these kind of things, guys, and you can, if you're not a Christian and you can, tolerate hearing a Christian perspective without getting fighting mad, come on over, man, to the Prometheus Lens podcast and join us on the hero's journey. And if you haven't, check out my book, The Epic of Esau, The Birthright and Seed War. You can find it on Amazon. That's kind of what stemmed into this. Like, I started searching out Esau and was like, man, he sounds like a Sasquatch to me. And then that kind of led into the serpent seed and where we're at now. So yeah, be sure to check that out.
That's awesome. I love how that connected into this one. Nice. What is it? Well, I don't know. Maybe I might be jumping the gun here. Aren't you might have something in the works as a new book?
Oh yeah. My new book that I'm working on is what we talked about today. This
That's
is what
right.
spurred this on. Yeah. So my new book I'm working on now is called The Tale of Two Trees. And the subtitle is Chasing the Dragon. And I know that's a euphemism for freebasing cocaine and heroin. I said that as kind of like a punch, gotcha, grab your attention kind of thing. I've always been guilty of being a little over the top and esoteric at times. So yeah.
Okay. I didn't even think of that. Fuck, I should have thought of that too. But that's great, man. Good for you. I hope that works out. I look forward to when that comes out. You better come back on and talk about it. So.
Oh, for sure.
Hell yeah. Thank you, everybody in the chat. That's what's up. Great comments in there. Everybody was cool. It was a nice show. That's why we go live. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.
They told us myths were made of smoke, just stories carved in stone. The fire still burns the same when you strike it on your own. Crowns built out of borrowed light, thrones wired into fear. Truth chained high on mountain walls while vultures circle near. If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call the beast by name. They say the truth will cost you friends, comfort, peace of mind, but slavery wears a softer face when fire's left behind. Tongues were split and lines were drawn, watchers set to rule. Whispers fed into the thrones while schools trained obedient fools. Serpents don't just lie with words, they plant them in the ground. Three truths wrapped around a lie make wisdom sound. They sell light without a source, awakening without a root. If the path avoids the cross, it's not the truth. So we steal the fire.